Let us start with the summary of this case, which is in this case, Adam, the manager of credit card services, and Johan, the internal audit manager at the National Malaysian Bank, discovered a potential data breach involving 80 customers whose credit card mailing addresses were altered without proper documentation or identity verification. This discovery follows an email complaint about unauthorized changes received by the bank. The investigation prompted by Johan's recommendation reveals that the mailing addresses of these 80 customers were linked to only 5 addresses, one of which, the Eden Healing Spa, was associated with 12 credit card customers. These changes occurred within the last 25 days and none were supported by complete change in personal details forms or proof of identity document. Yasmin was the first to lodge a complaint and 48 customers opted for online statements while the rest continued to receive hard copies. Concerned about corruption, Adam reassigns a current data entry clerk suspected to be involved to a less data sensitive role. Despite the bank's IT team finding no recent security breach, Anna, the IT security manager, suggests the possibility of an internal data breach. Johan investigates potential links between former and current employees and raises concern about further unauthorized changes and potential credit card fraud. He contemplates the possibility of an IT system backdoor or external manipulation.
Looking through the case, there are few scenarios where unauthorized changes to the mailing address were a result of internal data breaches and external data breaches. The first scenario is when the National Malaysian Bank's cardholder, who is Yasmin Tan, lodged a complaint about the unauthorized change in her mailing address. She stated that she did not receive the hard copy of her credit card statement for the month of February 2018. And when she checked her mailing address through the bank's computer system, she discovered that it was listed as Eden Healing Spa located in Sandakan instead of her home address. The next scenario is when the exception report produced by the bank's IT team highlights multiple events that deviate significantly from the standard, such as there were 80 different customers whose credit card account mailing address differ from the mailing address of their own bank accounts. The changes in the mailing address for all 80 credit card customers took place within the last 25 days, and none of these changes were evidenced by either a complete change in personal details form or proof of identified document. And the last scenario is when Johan ran a test to match the 5 suspicious mailing address with the address of current employee and former employee who left the company in the last 12 months. The result shows that Eden Healing Spa address matched the home address of a former employee who resigned 2 months ago. Thus, it indicates that the data breaches is done by the internal personnel who is the former employee who resigned 2 months ago. Moving forward, the question asks what internal control could have prevented these data breaches and what internal control could have detected these data breaches. We are going to cover on how to prevent these data breaches first. So the first way is by authorization. Authorization plays a crucial role in preventing data breaches by controlling access to sensitive information. By defining and enforcing specific permission, only authorized individuals can access certain data, and it will reduce the risk of potential breaches. From the case, the bank should be more strict in appointing an employee to a position because it was found that the internal data breaches is perpetrated by their former employee. And the second way is by the segregation of duties. Segregation of duties helps in preventing data breaches by dividing tasks and responsibilities among multiple individuals. This is to ensure that no single entity has complete control over critical processes, and it will reduce the risk of misuse of important data. By separating duties, the likelihood of intentional breaches will decrease. And from the case, we can see that Adam immediately assigns the data entry clerk to a less data-sensitive task for the next month. Next, what internal control could have detected these data breaches? Firstly, data breaches can be detected by reconciliation. Reconciliation can detect data breaches by comparing and validating different sets of data to identify inconsistency. Reconciliation involves cross-verifying data from multiple sources, and if there's a breach or unauthorized access, it may result in conflicting data between systems. Reconciliation helps identify this inconsistency, serving as an early warning system. The next way to detect these data breaches is by regular audits and assessment. Audit ensure that security controls are in compliance with established policies, industry standards, and regulation. Audit check the configuration setting of system and application to ensure they align with security best practices.
to propose 5 things in order to prevent further unauthorized changes in the customer's information. The first thing is strengthening security measure by enhancing access control and developing two-factor authentication. For instance, they need to ensure that only authorized personnel have access to the critical database and information. As for this case, we can see that the data clerk can easily change the customer's information without having to go through any personnel or any authorization. So in this case, we need to change that. The data clerk need to go through the manager or else Mr. Adam, in this case, to change the customer information when it is needed. There is an authorization in that process. As for the two-factor authentication, it is an extra layer of security to reduce the risk of unauthorized access. So, on top of the enhancing access control by ensuring only authorized personnel have the access, we can also add the password or give the ID code for the authorized personnel to get access to the databases and information, and no other personnel can have the same ID as the authorized personnel. In terms of policy and procedure, National Malaysian Bank already done a good job in their procedure of changing the customer information, where the customer need to come by to the bank for the face-to-face verification. However, they need to examine and improve the methods for changing the customer details and consider adding additional verification processes. For instance, adding a thumbprint verification. It is because everyone has a different thumbprint, so it is quite a useful measure to prevent from any frauds. And as for the policy enforcement, they need to enforce tight policy and procedural adherence, making certain that any changes in the client information are correctly documented and validated by the authorized personnel. National Malaysian Bank already have an IT security team in their organization. However, it is also good to consider bringing an outside IT security specialist to do a full review of the system and uncover any flaws. This can involve assessing the likelihood of the backdoor and external threats. The fourth measure is to do a regular security audits and monitoring. They can conduct frequent security audit to discover IT system and database issues. They can also implement real-time monitoring or day-to-day monitor of a vital system and databases to discover the anomalous activity as soon as possible. This might include abrupt changes in the client information or repeated address changes in a short period of time. As for this case, they only discover that the changes of the information, the customer's information has been changed in shortly after the issues has been raised, meaning that if they do daily basis monitoring, they could catch the issue as quick as possible. Last but not least is to educate and give employee a training. They should conduct a comprehensive training to employees on the data security, emphasizing the importance of protecting the customer information and recognizing the potential security threats. And they should also conduct awareness program for the employee to make them more educated about the consequences of the unauthorized access and the legal implication of the data breaches. The responsibility in the preventive measure lies with the combination of departments and individuals. The first responsible department is the management. Management needs to oversee the implementation of preventive measures and allocate necessary resources. And the second one is human resources. They need to involve with employees training, spread awareness program, as well as taking appropriate HR actions against the involved individuals. The third department is IT security team. They are responsible for the implementing and maintaining a robust IT security measures, conducting regular audits and monitoring for unusual activities. And the last one, internal audit team. They need to continuously assess the audit security measures and ensuring the compliance with policy and procedures.
So question 3 asks, what do you propose that Adam with the assistance of Johan and Anna, if required, should do to determine if the credit cards that were compromised have been used for fraudulent transaction? The first two methods are methods that should assist by Johan, meanwhile the last two methods with the help of Anna. So the first method that should Adam do is monitoring the account and statement of the affected cardholder regularly and look for any suspicious or unusual charge. As the credit card service manager, Adam responsible for ensuring the security of the credit card transaction. He should look for any kind of fraud such as transactions that are unusual in terms of amount, location and merchant. He should also look It should also set up fraud alerts on the credit card account, which are messages that card issuers send to the card holder via text or email whenever transaction happen. This can detect fraudulent activity on their account as soon as possible. Adam should coordinate with Johan, the Internet Audit Manager, to ensure that monitoring and reporting the credit card transaction are in compliance with IA standard and procedures. So the next method is Adam should report any fraudulent transaction to the card issuer and the authorities as soon as possible. What he should do is contacting the card holder to verify their identity and ask them to provide proof of purchase. If the card holder unable to do so, or if their answer are inconsistent, Adam should report the transaction as fraudulent to the card issuer and authorities, such as Bank Negara Malaysia or the police. With the help of Johan, he need to ensure that the investigation and reporting of suspicious order are in accordance with the IA standard and procedure. So the next one is the third method. By using credit card fraud detection tool and techniques to verify the identity of card holder. The example of the tool is CVV verification, which are by checking the 3-digit code on the back of the credit card. This will confirm that the card holder has the physical card in their possession and not just the card number. The next example is 3D secure tools. These are additional security layers that require the customer to enter a password, a one-time code or biometric authentication to confirm their identity. For example, Maybank is using Secure2You. Adam should collaborate with Ana, the IT security manager, to ensure that the credit card detection tools are implemented and maintained properly and securely. The last method is using the anti-fraud detection software to analyze the transaction data and look for the pattern and anomalies of fraud. The software uses artificial intelligence to detect the fraud. It can look for signs of fraud such as unusual spending pattern. The software can also learn from the outcome of the transaction and improve its accuracy over time. Adam should use software that suits his business need and industry and update it regularly to ensure that it can cope with the evolving fraud technique and tactic. Ana should ensure that the software is installed and updated securely.
Okay, so for the next question, in response to the security breach, the National Malaysian Bank need a comprehensive set of measures aimed at preventing any potential fraudulent use of the credit cards belonging to the active affected customers. So first and foremost, the bank needs to introduce enhanced monitoring and alert system design to promptly detect and notify the relevant authorities about any unusual or suspicious transactions. This involves setting up real-time alerts that act as a protective shield, signaling potential issues when transactions deviate from the regular spending patterns of the affected customers. Additionally, the bank needs to take decisive action through card blocking and replacement procedures. By immediately blocking the compromised credit cards, the bank effectively closes the door on any further unauthorized transaction, thereby securing the financial interests of its customers. In an effort to restore a sense of security, the bank also needs to issuing new credit cards to the affected customers, each equipped with unique card numbers. This process ensures that the bank provides customers with a renewed layer of protection, offering a fresh start and bolstering their financial security. And last but not least, recognizing the significance of transparent communication, the bank needs to actively informing and advising the affected customers about the situation. This approach empowers customers to proactively monitor their accounts, fostering a collaborative effort to identify and address any potential unauthorized transactions promptly. In a sense, these proactive and comprehensive measures underscore the National Malaysian Bank's unwavering commitment to customer protection, trust, and continual enhancement of its security infrastructure.
My name is Maisara and I will be addressing question 5. The first consequences is reputation damage, which occurs when organizations disclose data breaches to the public. This stems from losing customers' trust in their ability to protect sensitive information, resulting a higher risk of acquiring new customers. The betrayal of confidence may lead to a decline in client loyalty, difficulties in finding new customers, and increase in customer attrition and long-term financial consequences. To address this, Johan, as the internal audit manager, should raise awareness within the organization about the problem to prevent its recurrence. Despite the height of losing customers, the organization should implement new preventive measures to secure customer information, minimizing the risk after adding new procedures to prevent fraudulent activities. The next consequences is identity theft and fraud, where affected customers may become victims. In this case, Yasmin and other 80 credit card customers could potentially be victims of scammers and identity theft due to changes in their mailing address. Lastly, the operational disruption, meaning that internal investigation might interfere with inquiries related to the data breach and regular corporate activities. For instance, Johan needs to run tests to find matches among current employees, revealing that the data breach occurred because former employees who were aware of credit card applicants were involved. In this slide, I will be explaining the possible consequences of organization not disclosing data breach to the public. The first consequences is legal regulatory consequences. Organization that violate transparency by failing to inform impacted parties about a breach may face harsh penalties and fines from regulatory agencies. For example, Johan and Adam could be held liable if they do not disclose the data to the authorities. The second consequences is continued security threats. There is a constant risk to security as attackers might persist in taking advantage of the same vulnerabilities when the problem is not mitigated effectively. This highlights the significance of thorough and proactive security strategy, including frequent vulnerability assessment with swift incident response and ongoing monitoring to identify and address potential weakness before the attacker exploit them. In this case, Johan has discovered a malicious act but is unsure about the necessary next steps. The last consequences of not disclosing a data breach is extended exposure of sensitive information, as lack of awareness may allow attackers to exploit compromised data for an extended period without being discovered. For example, Adam and Johan finding out about the breaches may expose sensitive information since it is not immediately apparent if the intent to commit fraud, especially when the wrongdoers are internal to the organization.